You are who you are when no one is watching. Now, I can recall hearing this in my apartment in Atlanta about 15 or so years ago in a conversation with a classmate. It's just something that we were talking about. I have no idea, but the phrase stuck with me because it made me think a little bit. I was like, man, you are who you are when no one is watching. And it stuck with me, and I've chewed on it and thought about it. For some reason, it just stuck, kind of like peanut butter to the roof of your mouth. It just was there. Now, you fast forward to the present day, and I'm a parent, and I'm not real sure that there is ever a time in my life when no one is watching. Those days are gone. That's a joke. You can laugh. Aha, there we go. Good. I am always in view. There is no escape for me. But it's still important to think upon who we are when we're alone. Who are you when no one is watching? Today's story comes from a moment where we see someone when no one is watching. As many of you have experienced the growing lack of alone time in your life, I want you to just chew and think on the idea that you are who you are when no one is watching. Now we're going to the text, 43 slides. Here we go. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him. They ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon when David rose from his couch and was walking about on the roof of the king's house that he saw from the roof a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. David sent someone to inquire about the woman. It was reported, "This is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite." So David sent messengers to get her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she was purifying herself after her period. Then she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." So David sent word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab and the people fared and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." Uriah went out of the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the king's house with all the servants of his lord and did not go down to his house. When they told David, Uriah didn't go down to his house, David said to Uriah, "You have just come from a journey. Why did you not go down to your house?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah remain in booths, and my lord Joab and my servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do such a thing." Then David said to Uriah, "Remain here today, and tomorrow I'll send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day. On the next day, David invited him to eat and drink in his presence and made him drunk. And in the evening, he went out to lie on his couch with the servants of his lord. But he did not go down to his house. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter, he wrote, Set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him so that he may be struck down and die." As Joab kept watch over the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew there were valiant warriors. The men of the city came out and fought with Joab, and some of the servants of David among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite was killed as well. Then Joab sent and told David all the news about the fighting, and he instructed the messenger, "When you have finished telling the king all the news about the fighting, if the king's anger rises and he says to you, 'Why did you go so near to the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, we'll say? Did not a woman throw an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at Thebez? Why did you go so near to the wall?' Then you shall say, 'What he really wants to hear. Your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead too.' So the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent him to tell. The messenger said to David, 'The men have gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also.' David said to the messenger, 'Thus you shall say to Joab, do not let this matter trouble you, for the sword devours now one and now another. Press your attack on the city and overthrow it, and encourage him.' When the wife of Uriah heard that her husband was dead, she made lamentation for him. When the mourning was over, David sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son." We made it. We did all the slides. Good job, Jess. You are who you are when no one is watching. Here we see David, and this is his fall. He's been built up this whole time. But here we see just a tragic shift in his character. In this story, we see David acting as if no one was watching, as if no one would ever take note. The story we find here is so bad that we often want it untold. But unfortunately for David, you are who you are when no one's watching. In today's story, we see David the sinner. David, a man after God's own heart, breaks several, if not all, of the 10 Commandments. He coveted his neighbor's wife. He committed adultery. He attempted to cover it up. And then committed the murders of several individuals to conceal that he was the father of this child. Now, David, a child of the Torah, is not a keeper of the Torah, those commandments. As we hear the story unfold, David looks like someone who doesn't really know anything about Moses, anything about keeping commandments. He doesn't really care about any of that. Because here, I think we see David acting as if he thinks God isn't watching. As if God hasn't blessed him, as if God hasn't commanded anything. David's forgetfulness of God's commandments is interesting because if we look at Uriah, Uriah is the polar opposite of David here. Uriah is righteous. David is unrighteous. Uriah won't go to his home. He will not sleep with his wife while the kingdom is at war. But David, the man Uriah is out fighting a war for, David's not even anywhere close to the battlefield. He's in the palace hanging out on the rooftop on his couch. he is enjoying life, while this man, Uriah, is out fighting for him. And to make it worse, not only is the dude out fighting, he sleeps with his wife. Uriah looks a lot like David did earlier in the tale. Uriah, he's a Hittite. He's not even a Hebrew brother. He's a stranger, a foreigner, an alien in David's kingdom. And here we have David, the Lord's anointed, a man after God's own heart, committing some horrible, horrible crimes. Uriah is righteous, but David here, when he thinks that no one is watching, is unrighteous. Fascinating thing about this story is God is not mentioned at all. And David acts just like God isn't there. We may read this story and think, how odd. Why would this be included in Scripture and taint the image and portrayal of David? But we need this Scripture to show us the wages of gory sin. We look at this and we can learn something to make us a better disciple, something that helps us to press on in righteousness. You see, David thinks that God isn't watching, or at least his actions reveal that. But God is all within this story, even if there's no mention of him whatsoever. You are who you are when no one is watching. What are we like? What are we doing? What intentions do we have? We are good at forgetting that God is all-seeing and all-knowing. When no one is around can be the easiest moments to get tripped up and let sin enter into our lives. We plot, scheme, and plan to get what we want, all at the expense of relationships and even people. And David's actions start, of all places, the couch. Dude's just hanging out on his rooftop. Sees something he likes. And then it begins, this snowball, this escalation. We see a heart in David that's quickly shifted to where people aren't even people anymore. You see, people become to David just a means to an end, a way of getting what he wants. And David seeks to fulfill his sexual desires without any concern for how it will affect Bathsheba, Uriah, his own life, anybody else. David is out for David. And desire, it's a powerful thing. It can drive us to do some insane things. Now, here's something. We all have a David in us. Let me ask you, where is your David? By this, I mean, where are you trying to cover up sin at any cost? Where are you struggling with desire and obsession? Are you obsessed with keeping everyone from knowing who you are when you're alone? This story comes to us because of one man's obsession with keeping his sin secret and out of public eye. His desire to look untouched and untainted by sin created unbelievable grief and destruction of life. The desire to keep our public image safe, the desire for people to see us as perfect, as that family that's portrayed on the pictures on Facebook. Well, that motivation can lead us to a multitude of sins. Where is your David? What are you striving to hide from others? David's fascination and desire is to keep this thing secret, even though we know the entire story. We get to see it all. God sees it all. But I'm going to ask you about another character here, and that's Bathsheba. Where is your Bathsheba? By this, I mean, where are you complacent with sin? Afraid to speak up about it or against it? You see, the narrative that we have shows that Bathsheba never objected to David's actions, never pointed out the faults of his desires or ways. The only thing that she says in the text is via a messenger and says, I am pregnant. That is it. Now, there are all kinds of things, that factors that are there that we just don't know about. But looking just to get a glimpse here, just because someone in power urges us to sin doesn't mean it's right, or that we shouldn't speak up about it or object to it in some way. Whatever sin that we tolerate, we promote. And whatever sin we fail to call out, we are going along with. Bathsheba makes no mention about the judgment call with David's actions, a married woman. But I do think there are moments in our lives where just because someone's in power and they tell us, or we feel compelled to do whatever they ask, sometimes we're like, man, I just don't think this is right. This is not something I want to do. We all have a Bathsheba. Let me ask you, where is yours? The other thing that we can glean from this text is that covering up sin costs. David the sinner is fixated on keeping sin from coming to light, and he commits adultery. But when he learns that his sin will be made known by the pregnancy of Bathsheba, suddenly everything shifts in his focus, and he becomes driven, motivated, and downright determined to make sure that no one knows about his misdeeds. If you follow the text closely, you'll see that the phrase, "go down to your house," is used 4 times in those 43 slides. David wants Uriah to go to his house. But stubborn Uriah just won't go. So what do you do with people that won't do what you tell them? You kill them, right? You can laugh. That's it, yeah. Uriah just won't go down. And David is not taking no for an answer. He cannot stand Uriah's resistance to his will. Every parent has had a toddler, someone who will resist your will to the point that you will be so angry, yet without sin. Right? We've all had those moments. What is it like? It is so frustrating when somebody just won't do what I tell you to do. Just go down to your house. That's all Uriah had to do. Just go to your house. Go. But he won't go. He will not go. Eat your peas. No. Eat your peas. No. Eat your peas. Then they throw the plate on the floor, Oh, yeah. We've all had those moments. We've all had those moments. But, let me tell you, David's not taking no for an answer, right? So in this, we see the story. He's like, okay, fine. You won't go to your house? I got a solution. I got it figured out. I'm going to make this thing, nobody's going to know. I'll just make this happen. David wants the origins of this pregnancy hidden. So much so that he does everything he can to coerce a noble man to do his will. David wants an easy, smooth cover-up, but he just can't get it. So rather than confess the sin, this one sin's going to lead to another. The cover-up leads to more sin, okay? The cover-up leads to more sin. The desire to appear perfect gives birth to evil. Oh, we love to try and hide sin. We love it. But let me tell you what it does. It creates unnecessary stress. It creates unnecessary anxiety, and it creates dread. The burden of a secret is so hard for us that it just creates more and more work. It may be that we're kind of like David in this story, and Uriah, just go down to your house. Do what I need you to do. But the desire to keep this secret, the desire to keep sin secret, will drive us mad. It will make us do things that we never thought we would do, and it will make us harm relationships and people in ways that we have no idea about. And here's the kicker. God knows you're not perfect. God knows that you're not perfect. So what on earth are you doing trying to hide all this sin? You see, Jesus Christ took care of all of that 2,000 years ago. You don't need that. You don't need that dread. You don't need that fear. You don't need any of that, because the cover-up creates so much more anxiety and dread. Danny, I'm going to ask you to come in. You are who you are when you're alone. Today's story comes from the couch. We see David alone. And he reveals something about his character it's just unsavory. As Jessica told me, he said, "Do you have to do this story?" I was like, "Yeah, it's our story. It's in the Bible. It's a good one. I like it." But there's something to be said for when you're alone. It reveals a lot about who you are, what your character is really like. The other thing I'll tell you is this, is that we all have a David in us. We all have something somewhere that's tied up, a sin that we just don't want known, something that we just want to keep hidden more than anything else. And we're willing to do anything for it. Because for some reason, we have forgotten that God already knows. God loved you because you weren't perfect. Before you even knew there was a God, God loved you. And all those imperfections and flaws, God looks and says, "I love you. Absolutely love you." We all have a Bathsheba too. You see, how many times have we just gone along with it? Where somebody said something and you're like, you can't talk to people like that. Or somebody's treated somebody in a certain way, we've never spoke up about it. We never had the guts to call them out. We never had the will to go against somebody in power and authority. But what we tolerate in sin, we are just promoting. Let me tell you something too. Sometimes when you call somebody out on something, it is an epiphany for them because they never even knew they were doing it in the first place. They had no clue. No clue. And that could be God using you to make somebody a little better. And you're just afraid of it. Just afraid. Let me tell you this. Covering up sin is costly. It costs relationships. It costs lives. And I don't know who we're trying to impress the whole time we're living our lives. I have no clue. No clue. Because God already knows. And God knows everything about that sin. God knows that you're not perfect. And God says, I love you anyway. Right where you are, I love you. It's a heavy text. It's not like a fun, uplifting one of those where you're like, man. But it gives you some things to think about. Some things to chew on. Because I can go back 15 years and just remember a phrase from a conversation. You are who you are when no one's watching.